Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to tonight's program. I'm Julie Perdue, the Youth Services Manager at Bexley Public Library, and I'm so happy that you could join us for this presentation with our local school psychologist, Alex Passafiume, and Dr. Betsy Saltsman. They have a practice in Bexley and also practice in the schools for school psychology and what our students need on many important topics that we're facing today. They have done a presentation on getting your child ready for kindergarten, which is also on our YouTube channel, and we'll have a link to that presentation as well. And tonight we are talking about learning differences in the lives of your students and children and how we can intervene, evaluate, and empower. So this is going to cover IEP and support and how to work with your school so that your child and student can be successful. So thank you so much for doing this presentation for us tonight, and we'll get started whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Julie. So as Julie said, Betsy and I are school psychologists. We offer expertise in child development, educational specialties, and identifying childhood, teen, and early adulthood disabilities for educational needs. We do offer free 15-minute phone call sessions, and some contact information is provided on this slide here. So in talking about identifying and supporting children in school, it always starts in the general education setting. So general education supports can have many different names. Some schools call them MTSS, response to intervention, student success, and reading improvement plans are some of the more common names that you'll hear. What these all are differentiation. All general education teachers should and are able to provide differentiation to children by changing their teaching methods, creating small groups, adjusting content, and emphasizing multiple pathways to learning, like multisensory and some other examples we'll give you. This is a great place for parents to start collecting data and asking questions as well. What are you doing to differentiate for my child? What does their small group look like? And we'll get into some other examples as well. So, what could these be for? They can be for any area of learning or childhood development. Academics, behavior, social, emotional, adaptive behavior are just a few examples of what we typically see on a student success plan, a reading improvement plan. All of these things can be used to target learners in the regular education classroom. When your child begins a small group or in a MTSS or RTI process, these are a few key questions that you'll want to make sure get answered so you understand what is being done to support your child through the regular education supports first. Who will deliver the intervention? Is it my child's teacher or is it the teacher's aide? Who will conduct the progress monitoring? How will they be progress monitored? How often? What is the frequency and duration of the intervention? Lots of good questions. How will success be measured? My child's in 5th grade, but you have a goal set for them in 3rd grade. How will we get them back to 5th grade? These are all important questions and wonderings that your school team should and would be able to ask and answer for you in whatever formal plan they create to support. And we have some examples. So an example of a reading fluency goal might be 45 words per minute, increased to 55 words per minute for 8 weeks. They meet 3 times a week for 15 minutes. We have the progress monitoring outlined, and you see that this outline answers all of the previous slides' questions. Another example might be a behavior goal with a student success or RTI plan. The goal, increase on-task behavior from 50% to 65%. We intervene daily with rewards and 1-minute pre-reading check-ins. Progress monitoring, daily stickers can be used to re-record success. Success is based on changing to 80% or more. So again, all of the questions on the previous slide are answered by this outline of a success plan.
So those are different things that can happen in the school system leading up to possibly doing an evaluation on a child or a student, and that is within the educational system. There are other options as well to do an evaluation by a private outside psychologist. And the reason for maybe doing that is there are different perspectives. Within the education system, they may observe things differently than at home. The child may behave differently at school than they do at home, so they won't observe the behaviors that might be concerning to parents at home. Concerns beyond school. So if the child is still performing at a level expected of them when compared to their peers in the educational setting, then they may not look beyond that, because that is the main goal of the psychologists who work in the school system. While a psychologist who does a private evaluation can look more deeply into some of the other things like anxiety and depression that, while the school may look at, if it's not having a negative impact on the child's learning ability or performance in education, they don't necessarily require an IEP or individualized instruction. Additionally, if they have a clinical diagnosis through a private psychologist, then that can open some doors to other resources. For example, a 504 plan, which enables a child to get accommodations based on like their mental health diagnosis or a medical diagnosis, as well as broader supports. So not only supports within the school system, but also additional supports within the community. So there are many different ways that a child can be referred for a school-based evaluation. Parents can request an evaluation at any time. The school team, along with the parent, decides whether or not to move forward. So even if a parent requests an evaluation, there are multiple steps that have to be gone through. The interventions that Alex just talked about still have to be gone through to see if the student can make progress. And then, after the interventions have been done, the team, including the parents, will meet together and discuss how the student has progressed through those. And then if a parent does request an evaluation be done, then the district has to respond within 30 days, meaning they have to contact you and have a conversation with you about what the next steps are within 30 days of the date that the request is received. So supporting the school-based evaluation process. Private evaluations and recommendations can help move the process faster. Oftentimes, some of the interventions can take more time than a parent is okay with waiting, because they want their student to get additional help quicker. And so having a private evaluation done can help with that, because they're able to identify strengths and weaknesses prior to the intervention process being totally completed. Parents should ask things, what tools and processes will be used, and that's specific for a private evaluation or a school-based evaluation, as well as request additional instruments if you have specific concerns. For example, observations are typically done in the school setting, so if there's maybe if there's autism concerns, or a student who has difficulty interacting socially with other students, maybe an observation be done specifically at recess time or at lunchtime when the student is encouraged to interact more with their peers. So after the parent or the team has referred a child for an evaluation, there will be a team meeting, and the core members in this team meeting are typically a school psychologist, the child's general education teacher, a special education teacher, and an administrator. Some of the optional members are an occupational therapist, a speech and language pathologist, and a physical therapist, because not every child has those specific concerns. so they may not be needed in the meeting. And then you must receive a prior written notice, which Alex will talk about in a moment, within 1 day of the meeting that you have with the team that basically just summarizes everything that happened in the team meeting.
So if your child moves into a school-based evaluation, the school psychologist will then present to you a planning form. So these are the main components of a planning form for a school-based evaluation. And you see these language can be kind of confusing. You're not sure what tools they're going to use. And so as you're at what's called the planning meeting, you as the parent may need to ask, what assessments are you going to use to evaluate my child's general intelligence? What assessments will you use to evaluate their academic skills? You'll see that dyslexia, autism, those categories aren't listed on here. So if you have a specific categorical concern, you may need to make requests for specific assessments and ask, my child, I'm concerned, has autism. Can you do autistic specific assessments? What will they be? Can you describe to me what my child will experience? And most good school psychologists will walk you through the tools that they're going to use and how they'll evaluate these different areas. But some of these areas, like motor, are going to be evaluated by the occupational therapist or the physical therapist, and they can sometimes talk to you a little bit about those assessment tools as well. And you'll see input from educational team and parents. You are a part of the educational team. You are the main part of the educational team. You provide the consent. Your input should be woven within the final document of this evaluation, and your input should be included in what tools and areas are evaluated for your child in any evaluation, school or private. So one of the main tools that schools use to write the story before an evaluation and after is called a prior written notice. So a prior written notice is not for your notes. It is to document the school's conclusion of a meeting. So I always tell parents and administrators and everyone, you do need to take your own notes because it will likely not be on this document. The document may simply read, we are moving forward with an autism evaluation for Johnny, and then the second box will say, because of noted deficits in language and social skills. And that might be the bulk of the document. So your own personal notes or more comprehensive notes may need to be taken, and I would not typically rely on this to be that part, but what I would rely on this to be to make sure that you know and understand the conclusion of the school district. So if you're reading something and you are, I'm not sure that that's what we concluded on, then you need to go back and ask for clarification on this document. And this should be a very parent-friendly document. This should be something with lots of boxes checked, but ultimately when you read it, you can understand what is going to be done for my child. Is this your slide? So once the process begins, the school has 60 days after parent consent to begin the evaluation process. The purpose of a school-based evaluation is not whether or not your child has a disability. The ultimate purpose is, do they require specially designed instruction or an IEP? Some children with disabilities do not require an IEP. So the bulk of the conclusions here will be, does your child, need specially designed instruction, something different that only a special ed instructor like a special ed teacher, occupational therapist, speech pathologist can provide, and do they need that within the special ed settings? You do not have to agree with any school district conclusions. Parents have the right to disagree at any time throughout the process. At the conclusion, you can write letters of disagreement if you are not in agreement with the category or the conclusion that your child does or does not qualify. But ultimately, school-based evaluations are just focused on the qualification of special ed. So that is different than, as we were talking about, private evaluations. Private evaluations can make all kinds of recommendations for counseling, for occupational therapy in a private setting, for school-based or home-based recommendations. But school evaluations are focused on the single question, do they need an IEP?
And then to kind of continue and elaborate a little more on the difference between the school-based evaluations versus a private evaluation. A school-based evaluation results in an eligibility category, while a clinical or a private evaluation results in a clinical diagnosis. So an eligibility category, in the state of Ohio, there are 13 different categories where a child can qualify under or fall under for special education services or to have an IEP. And those include things like a specific learning disability, autism, speech and language disability, visually impaired. Those are just to name a few of those things, but it is not an actual medical diagnosis because it's guided by definitions that are provided by the state of Ohio as well as federal definitions for each one of those eligibility categories. Where in a private evaluation, a child or a student can receive a a mental health diagnosis or some kind of medical diagnosis specifically for ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, anxiety, those kind of things. So it's actually taken from the DSM, which is the medical, the book that's used to medically diagnose those different kinds of disabilities. And that's why they're able to be make recommendations for so many other outside services instead of just the eligibility category, which has to stay within the focus of the school.
So if your child is eligible for services, they will go on what's called an IEP, or an individual education plan. And just like before, there's going to be a lot of things outlined. Who is going to provide this service? What will this intervention be? How frequently will it occur? The IEP has to be completed 30 days, no later than 30 days after the conclusion of the evaluation. They should present present levels, give you measurable annual goals, and accommodations and modifications should be outlined. So again, those interventions, what is someone instructing or teaching your child versus the accommodation? A general education teacher can provide an accommodation, like extended time, breaks, getting up and getting a drink of water. But a special ed teacher needs to be providing a direct intervention that's outlined with minutes and specific goals that are measured with progress monitoring tools. The services begin as soon as you provide your consent on this document, and there should be ongoing monitoring and review. So IEPs are reviewed annually, but again, your parent rights. If you have concerns about your child's IEP or anything that we've talked about, you should always feel free to contact anyone from your child's school and get a team meeting. A team meeting doesn't have to be one-on-one with the principal. It can be you, the intervention specialist, the principal. You don't have to settle for a phone call. You can ask for team meetings. That is a parent right that you have. And I've seen some parents get a little nervous about asking for team meetings. But when it comes to IEPs and services that your child needs, it's important to have all hands on deck so that you're getting the correct information from the correct people.
So that concludes our presentation for today. I know there is a slide that will be on the on the website, on the recording, that has our contact information on it. And Alex and I both do private evaluations, you know, the ones that we've been talking about with the clinical diagnosis. We can make recommendations for school eligibility, those kind of things, as well as providing parents with support and advocating for them if they're already working with the school district. Those are all things that we do. So if you need to reach out to either one of us, you can go back to that original slide that has our information on it. But we would love to take any questions that you might have, or even if you want to talk to us after the presentation, that would be fine as well. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming. And you are more than welcome to ask Alex and Betsy any questions after the presentation. But if there is anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question that you think would be helpful for anybody who's going to watch this on our YouTube channel in the future, you know, please feel free to do that too, but you don't have to. Okay, so that concludes our program tonight, but please take note in our links to the other presentation that they've done for us about kindergarten readiness, and also their contact information will be included on a slide with this video. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a good evening.